This is going to be a video just for anyone that purchases the Felder K540s, and I'm assuming that many of their other saws will be similar, but and I've heard this from other people that the instructions are very complicated, and we found that they were a little complicated. The instructions are made to be universal, so they don't have words, they have just pictures so that there's no translation issues, which is great, but you need some things explained a little more in depth. So I'm going to jump into this. The reason I'm making this video is to show some of the things that we had a little trouble understanding and to maybe save you if you're going to buy this saw. Number one, this was in the email they sent us, but it was not in the instructions. There's a sticker that's going to be right here. I took the sticker off, unfortunately, already. There's a bolt that goes right here, and there's another bolt on the other side over here that it comes in here that locks the blade in. For shipping, you have to take those bolts out. I'll show you what it looked like on our saw, but according to a video I watched, it might be just an Allen bolt. For us, it was like a grub screw with a nut on it. So you have to take that bolt out. Also, for shipping, on the slider up under here, let's see, it was in this track. There's two little round plastic plugs that you have to take out. Those plugs have a little hole in them. Take an Allen wrench, stick it in that hole, and just pull. You don't have to turn it, it's just a hole to pull it with. That was one of the things we found. If you have this arm, we did have to punch out the knockouts for these three bolts. No big deal, but you know, if you're like us, before we punched them out, we're like, are we sure we got to punch out these knockouts? And on ours, believe it or not, Felder had mounted this backwards. It was sloping that way, and you know, caused a little confusion because we're like, wait, this should be going the other way. So we called Felder. They said yes, it was mounted backwards. So this comes mounted to this, but they had reversed it, so no big deal. We just unbolted it, flipped it around. Also, when we did this on our saw, these bolts were in this hole. We had to move them over. Same on this one. We had to move them over in order to line up properly. Now, I posted yesterday a video about this table because this is what gave us the biggest grief. So I'm gonna go over this again, but I did an in-depth video. You have to put this on first because you have two screws that the head slides into this. So the reason you have to put this on first is because those screws, you got to put them on and thread them into this. You have three bolts here. 1, 2, 3. You have 3 supports. All right, so the big silver bolts go there. We finally figured out that the felt pads were to go on top of the silver bolts. You're gonna have 3 felt pads. I discussed this in a separate video, but I'll show it now that it's done. So you have one bolt that was about 40 millimeters long. So that bolt, those are 2, you have 2 of them. Those are made to go on the bottom of this. You see, that's why they're shorter than these bolts. These support the top, and all they are is just a support. They're not bolted here, they're bolted here. Also, you only have 3 of this bolt. 2 of them go on this arm, 1 of them on this arm. And then the other, where you think you need a bolt, it's because you're gonna bolt this support in, and it actually has a captive nut, so it's acting to hold this piece on. One of the things I didn't mention yesterday, these tabs go in and slide down. We did have to lightly file those. It seemed that the powder coating had filled the little gaps. So we had to lightly file the gap on these tabs. It goes in and then slides down. And again, I mentioned yesterday on a video that these are self-tapping screws and they're really hard to tap. The hole is not tapped, so it might confuse you when you look and you're like, why is this hole not tapped? They are self-tapping screws. Other things, we put the micro adjust on here. It's a separate piece. It was pretty straightforward, and I'm trying to think if there was any other things that we had issues with, but overall, just kind of want to show the construction, how everything was put together, because the instructions were a little hard to figure out. And this piece is, if you have a board, a long board you're going to rip, you can push it up against it. This is removable, and there was really no explanation on what that was, but we figured it out. And when you turn the saw on, this is one thing that we found. When you stop it, there's a blade break, and it's about a 10-second hum that you're gonna hear. So I don't know if I can start it with it back. Yeah. So when you stop it, hear that hum? So Felder said that's normal. That's because the blade brake has to go in and come back out apparently. Then it stops. You can't restart it for that few seconds. That's normal. We did call Felder on that. So we haven't installed the scoring blade yet, but you need to watch their video on that, because you don't just put the scoring blade in. You have to shim the scoring blade for the width of your saw blade. So you do a test cut, and then you shim the scoring blade to that. That's why we haven't put that in yet. We don't do a lot of laminates, and no big deal. So that's how the saw is put together, and I'm just going to show. So this can move to here. We use it more for cross-cutting than for panels. And also, you unlock it. I'm doing this one-handed here, and you can move the slider. You can slide it back, is what I'm trying to show. Can't do it with one hand. You can slide it back like this, but when you have it on this end, you can't fully extend this. It'll only fully extend when you're on this end. But I had to move it up so I could open this to show you the blade. Any other things that we ran into? I'm trying to think. Obviously, we literally just set this up yesterday. Haven't hooked up dust collection yet. And on this table, it just hooks in. You have little grub screws to adjust the height. We did not have to adjust this. We put it in and it was perfect. But then you adjust this. These just press against the machine, and you adjust to move this end to change the angle of the table. You're just adjusting these in and out. These and these will adjust the up and down of this table. And what we did, We adjusted it with these, and then we just moved these up to match it, and it came out just right. And those are some of the things that we, you know, had to figure out. So I'm trying to save somebody the trouble. By the way, these panels, it is the craziest way that you have to open these panels. You have to undo these little plastic things, and they have a little dovetail. And just know that when you take these panels off, they're a pain to get back on. You do have to take this panel off in order to tighten up these bolts on the inside if you have this arm attachment. And just know that getting this panel back on is not fun. I wasn't happy with how that was done. And it seems like we had some, so of course this is in the instructions, but your slider bolts, there are bolts. I got to get my phone down in there, and I don't know how to do this. Anyway, let me do it a different way. Sorry. Let me see if I can get around here. Okay, here you go. See these bolts? There is a torque sequence, and on your instruction manual, they got them listed A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, whatever. And on the instructions, it shows a wrench, and then it has a feather, and then it shows a wrench, and it has like a strong arm, a guy going like this. So what it's telling you is they want you to lightly tighten and then come back and tighten in order, A, B, C, D. So you do these inside ones first, these outside ones next, and you need to slide this all the way back for these two. I'm gonna try to show this, but I can't aim. But anyway, you need to get inside here because you won't be able to get your wrench around the other way. So the bolts to put this on do have a tightening sequence, and you put them loose, then you go back and you tighten them. We did not have to adjust this at all. It was perfect when we put it on. They adjust that at the factory. I was very impressed with that. And that's, as far as I can think, the things that we had issues with, I believe. Mark, there was something with this lock we had to figure out.
There's parts on the back side that come out.
Yeah.
Then you have to adjust it 20 mil back.
Oh, that was it. Okay, you'll have to read this. This thing right here is your lock. There is an adjuster, and for the sake of time, it's like these, but there's a little adjuster up in here. I'll have to slide it all the way back, and I'm not going to stop and do it. You have to loosen that screw and then slide this bar back and tighten it up. And I think it's just a shipping thing. They move this in for shipping, and you have to bring it back out 20 millimeters, I believe it was, so that your lock is sticking out. So that is it. If you've bought this saw, hopefully this video will help you figure out how to put it together. I'm going to do a walk around just for those of you, you know, if you're like me, you just want to see things, how they're put together. So I'm just going to show some of the things, all right? So, and these two bolts go in first, torque them all the way down. And then what we did was we measured this gap here to make sure this is straight, and we adjusted these bolts. Here's your, well, I'm just gonna let you look at everything. Also, there's a locking. You're gonna find that there's a little nylon screw that you have to undo to unlock this. And then they supply you with a handle to tighten it down, which we don't have on it. These are also self-tapping, and then these have a nut on the other side, but these just self-tap in. What we did was bolt this on and leave it just a little loose so we could line this up, put it on, then we torque the bolts. All right, hope that helps.